December 14th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Commission for the City of Monterey. This is our last meeting of 2021. We have several agenda items and everybody should have their fair due, but this is just an afternoon session. So I think we can be efficient, right? We will begin with the roll call.
Yes, I will start with you, Chair Freeman.
Here.
And Vice Chair Reed.
Present.
Commissioner Brassfield.
Present.
Commissioner Dawson.
Here.
Commissioner Fletcher has already let us know he would be absent today. Commissioner Latassa.
Present.
And Commissioner Milich.
Here.
Thank you. We have 6 commissioners present, and for staff who will be speaking today, we have Community Development Director Cole, Principal Planner Roveri, Senior Associate Planner Schmidt, Associate Planner Sabdo, Housing Analyst Leonard, myself, Recording Secretary Cleary, and Administrative Assistant Barrera. And that is it for staff.
That's the entire staff.
Just about, yeah, almost.
Where's Hans?
All right. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Actually, I think they have.
Not really.
presentation On number
The
2.
first item on the agenda is a presentation on Senate Bill number 9, Senate Bill number 35.
Great. Thank you, Chair Freeman and Commissioners. As you've probably been hearing, the state of California has been adopting a lot of legislation. Much of that focuses on housing legislation, and we're bringing forth a brief presentation on a couple of bills in advance of us actually starting to think about this more in the upcoming year. So I'd like to introduce, we should have joining us remotely, Fernando Riveri, our principal planner, who will start off with a presentation about SB 35. And then Grant Leonard, our housing analyst, who will give us a brief update on SB 9. So with that, Fernanda, I will turn it over to you if you can join us remotely.
Yes, thank you. I am trying to get into the meeting. It wasn't working through the email, so I had to join with my phone, but let me try again.
So Fernanda, we have your presentation and we can bring that up. And if that would be helpful.
Let me just try one more time. Sorry, I'm almost there, I think. I think it should work.
We could start with Grant. Oh, there's Grant.
Sounds like he's underwater.
Yes, happy to start. If it makes it easier, I did email the presentation to Jennifer and just have me say next slide, and we don't have to worry about technical glitches then, I think.
Yes, we can bring it up for you.
SB 9.
SB 9.
Oh, is it okay if I share my screen now?
Oh, okay, Fernanda, please go ahead.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Who's confused?
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm not sure if you can see me, but I'm here. My name is Fernando Roveri, Principal Planner for the City of Monterey, and I'll be giving you a presentation on California Senate Bill 35, the Housing Accountability and Affordability Act. So SB 35 is codified in section 65913.4. And basically, it allows a streamlined ministerial review process for qualifying multifamily housing developments that comply with objective design standards and provide specified levels of affordable housing. And there are other requirements that I will talk about as well. The intent of the bill is to facilitate and expedite construction of housing and to mitigate against high housing costs. the state made it a priority to build more housing in the state. And the bill sunsets on January 1st, 2026. So the Department of Housing and Community Development assigns each jurisdiction housing production goals for different income categories. And this is called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. So the city of Monterey was allocated a certain number of units to build by a certain date. And unfortunately, the city was not able to meet that goal because of a variety of issues, one of them being water availability. So we submitted our report to the Housing and Community Development Department, but we were short on our goal. And so our SB 35 applies to Monterey in that we need to streamline review and approval of certain affordable housing projects. So qualifying projects are reviewed using a ministerial process. What does that mean? It means no discretionary approval can be required. Discretionary means, a decision-making body saying yes or no. Processing timeframes are specified in the code, and I will talk about them a little later. And so because this is a ministerial action, the project is not subject to environmental review under CEQA. So projects are only subject to CEQA if they have a discretionary review. So projects that qualify under SB 35, no CEQA. Prior to submitting an SB 35 application, the project applicant must submit a preliminary application, and we still need to develop this preliminary application. So, like I said, because it's a ministerial review, public hearings are not allowed. However, we can allow a design review or a public oversight process. However, it must be objective. And basically, the project would need to follow criteria that is objective and basically a checklist. So we would come up with a checklist of the criteria that the project needs to meet. And if they meet it, then they pass the design review. And this code specifically provides that the design review or public oversight cannot in any way inhibit, chill, or preclude the ministerial approval process. And so, like I said, this design review boils down to a checklist. So if they meet it, then the project goes through. So there are many eligibility criteria under the government code, but I'm just going to talk about a few that are more applicable to the city of Monterey. So these criteria, in order for a project to be reviewed under SB 35, there needs to be at least 2 multifamily residential units under consideration. And if it's a mixed-use project, at least two-thirds of the square footage must be designated for residential use. And there needs to be a minimum number of affordable units, and that is, the project needs to contain more than 10 units that are reserved at least 10% as affordable to households making below 80% of the area median income. So all of these criteria need to be met in order for the project to qualify for SB 35 ministerial review. Another one is urban infill. The project site must be on a legal parcel with 75% of its perimeter adjoining parcels that are developed with urban uses and it needs to be zoned for residential or mixed uses. And it cannot be located within a coastal zone, prime farmland, wetland, high fire severity zone, hazardous waste site, earthquake fault zone, floodplain, floodway, conservation plan area, a special habitat area, or in a conservation easement. And the development cannot demolish a historic structure that is currently listed on a historic register. And the project also must be consistent with objective design standards. So all of these that I mentioned, the project will need to meet these in order to qualify for the ministerial review. So what are objective design planning standards? So the SB 35 defines these as standards that involve no personal or subjective judgment by a public official and are verifiable. Basically, everyone who reads the standard can agree that they know what it means and how to measure it. So it has to be objective, and there can be no question about what the standard means or how to meet it. Parking requirements for projects that qualify under SB 35. No parking may be required if the project is within 1/2 mile of a public transit stop, architecturally or historically significant in a historic district, within 1 block of a car share station, or within an area where on-street parking permits are required but not offered to the development occupants. And if the project is not located within those areas, then no more than 1 parking space per unit can be required. The approval timeline, so this is how it works. The applicant must submit an application specifically requesting SB 35 processing. Once they do that, they would fill out a preliminary application that we would come up with, and they would have to, once we create objective design standards, they would have to follow the checklist and tell us how they meet each of these standards. And so within 60 days of application submittal, that's when we need to determine whether the project can be reviewed under SB 35. So that's for 150 or fewer units, but we have 90 days for projects that are more than 150 units. And the design review and approval needs to happen within 90 days from project application submittal for projects with 150 or fewer units, and 180 days for projects with more than 150 units. So SB 35 projects are ministerial. No public hearings are allowed. Like I said, this design review process can occur if city so chooses, and it may be conducted by the Planning Commission or an equivalent board such as the Architectural Review Committee, or even the City Council. And again, design review must be objective and focused on assessing compliance with criteria required for streamlined projects, as well as any reasonable objective design standard. And again, the design review process may not inhibit the ministerial approval. So the project, SB 35 projects are not subject to CEQA, and so we cannot require any studies like traffic, air quality, or noise studies. But we do have to do a tribal consultation where we engage with any California Native American tribe that is traditionally and culturally affiliated with the area of the proposed project. And so the consultation, there needs to be an agreement reached that there are no impacts, or to identify the impacts and agree to mitigation. If the parties don't agree, the project applicant is not eligible to utilize SB 35. And so next steps would be to create those objective design standards, which would give the city the ability to have that design review process. However, it would be, we envision it being a checklist where the applicant submits the checklist and tells us how the project meets each of the criteria. And those are the next steps. It would be to create that checklist and amend our specific plans or other regulations to make sure that the standards read as objective. And with that, I can answer any questions, or I can let Grant give his presentation, however you would like to proceed.
This is Hanson. So the obvious question is water, right? So how does water fit into this? Water is not water is not subjective, but if there's no water to do the development, can the city have water be a criteria for the development like it does for all other development today?
Right. So the project is still subject to the cease and desist order and the moratorium on new water meters. So the site would need to have a water source, but with it, we wouldn't be able to give water. So it would just follow the regular process that any project follows right now.
Wouldn't make much sense to allow a building to be built and just sit there, but you don't allow it to be occupied because there's no water. It'd be silly.
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but I mean, part of the reason why we don't have the number of units in the city is because we can't build because we don't have water. So it's the proverbial catch-22. And it seems so. Another question is, so let's say that somebody didn't have water, right? And they found a place and they submitted their application through SB 35, right? And then they got the design, they basically got it approved, but they don't have the water to build it. Wouldn't they still have the approval for it that would sit there for a period of time? And then if water came by, then they would get that approved? I mean, how does it work? How does water fit into all of this?
So I didn't mention this, but the projects that qualify under SB 35 have a 3-year approval. So they have 3 years. And their permit is active for that time. And after that, they would have to reapply. And they would just basically be subject to the water moratorium. So they would have to find a way to get more water in order to build. So the project would sit there until they are able to move forward.
Fernanda, this is Terry Latassa. In my experience, it's sort of a 2-step process to actually start construction on a project. You have to get planning approval, then you have to get the building permit. And in most jurisdictions, you can actually go ahead and get planning approval for a project if you don't have water. But when you come to the end of the building permit process and you don't have your water permit, you can't start construction.
You don't get a certificate of
Yeah.
occupancy either.
Well,
Even
you
if you
would
did
be allowed
build
to start construction.
So Commissioner,
That's correct.
Kim Cole, so Terry, what Terry Latassa is referring to is accurate. Currently, you could obtain your planning permit. You could obtain your plan check corrections on your building permit. But in order to issue a building permit in the city of Monterey, we need a stamp from the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District confirming adequate water credits. And then obviously the meter issue is also looked at. So if the project was unable to obtain that, then what Fernanda is suggesting is that planning permit would be good for a 3-year period and then would expire after that 3-year period. Now, we have some developers that choose to go through that entire process, and it's worth it for them to obtain their planning approvals, to work on their building permits, and realizing their project's going to sit there and their building, their building plan check may expire and their planning approval may expire. But we will not allow construction to begin without adequate water credits or a water meter.
Thank you.
Quick question. What number by what date did we not meet?
So we've had a 8-year housing element cycle that'll end in 2022. So at the, no, I take that back, 2023. And I think it's around 650 housing units. I think we've built about, you can look back at our annual report, I think it's about 100 in total with conversion of use. Last year, it was only between, I don't remember the number, it was less than 15 units, and they were predominantly all accessory dwelling units. And that's because we don't have a water supply. We're not building because it's very difficult to have enough water credits to be able to move forward with the project in Monterey. The new number that's currently being debated right now by the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, there's a couple numbers being reviewed by them. One is about 2,200 units. The other one is about 2,000, I believe. I think it's 600 or 900 units. I bet Grant might remember better than I. And then we have groups like Land Watch recommending that our unit count be moved up to around 5,000 housing units. Monterey has less than 11,000 housing units right now. Some of those proposals are looking at a 50% increase in our housing allocation, which means we will have to provide, we're going to start working on our housing element in this next year, and you have to provide adequate sites at zoning intensities to meet the regional housing needs. So one of those scenarios gives us like 900 very low income units. I don't know what the criteria is going to be going forward. In the past, it has to be zoned at over 30 dwelling units per acre, and you have to have adequate sites to show that you could accommodate that development. If we get a number like 5,000 housing units, I'll even say 2,900 or 2,200 is probably some very dramatic changes to our land use planning in the city of Monterey, with the ultimate outcome still being we don't have water. So we have some really challenging policy discussions once we get our RENA number happening in 2022 and 2023. Our housing element has to be adopted by December of 2023 with our new RENA allocation. If you're not following the RENA process at the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments level, it's a very interesting discussion that's happening right now. I think our last meeting was just about a week and a half ago, and the board of directors pushed off their decision. I believe it was till January. And it'll be their second major public hearing on the numbers. But you can imagine what happens if we get a number like 5,000 plus housing units that was recommended by Land Watch. It will be a dramatic potential future change to land use planning in the city of Monterey.
Do we even have the acreage for something like that?
Well, that's a good question, right?
I don't think we do.
Well, we have the former Fort Ord property that if we take it and rezone it from industrial uses to 100% residential, can we get 2,000 housing units on it? How tall would those buildings be? They would be on the outskirts of town, which isn't something I really like to see from a planning standpoint.
They'd be under the aircraft.
They'd be adjacent to the aircraft hazard zones. I don't think they would be under them, but they would be adjacent to them.
Suburban.
We would be doing suburban sprawl.
Yeah, wouldn't that seem not to qualify for one of the criterias was that it was urban related, and out of Fort Ord is not urban related.
Oh, I think that right now I'm discussing two different things, right? We got sidetracked a little bit on the regional housing needs discussion versus the SB 35 discussion.
Got it. Thanks.
I have a question about zoning. Is this one of those funny little laws that's going to change our single family zoning to multiple family?
So that's SB 9. And so Grant, I'm going to share with you SB 9.
I still have a question. What differences in the process will it make that will affect the planners?
This would be an SB 35 project would be a ministerial review with a possible design review process, which can only look like a checklist. So the project applicant would submit the project and tell us how it meets the checklist. And basically, the checklist is going to say things like, does the project meet the height requirement? Or does it provide the adequate parking? It's going to look very objective, basically, and very numerical. So we cannot have any discretion on those criteria. And so we would need to amend our specific plans, because right now the way that they read is that there are guidelines in there that say, for example, buildings with a certain type of architecture are encouraged, or a certain type of material or color are encouraged. And we cannot have those words anymore. We have to be very objective. And so we would have to change those plans, and it would change planners review, because we would just go down the checklist, and then the project could go through the design review process, but no discretion can be made.
It almost sounds like it's more of a building permit type of checklist.
My concern,
It's
I have a
very close to
concern.
that.
Are we required under this new law to allow them to be built? Or do they have to be built and occupied? And the reason I answer that is because if there's no water, they can't be occupied. But I'm concerned that the state, in all its wisdom, might take the position that build them now and occupy them later when you have water, which makes no sense at all, which is why I think it's something the state would probably strongly consider.
Sounds like China.
Yeah.
Well, we cannot issue a building permit if we don't have approval from the water district.
Yeah,
So
I'm just saying,
they cannot even
I
build.
understand that, Fernanda. That's not my concern. My concern is with the state saying you have to allow them to be built even though they can't be occupied. And if you don't allow them to be built, then you're in violation of SB 35 or whatever it is.
So I think we would be in possible violation of another state agency then with the State Water Resources. So I don't think that
Yeah.
the State Water Resources Control Board is going to allow the development to be constructed. In the city of Monterey, I think as planners in the building department, we will not be issuing permits if we don't have water supply. So
I'm just giving a heads up to what I think could be coming down the pike from the state.
wow, that'd be interesting.
Kim, on the issue of the water, the city's policy is generally to react to another agency that's not in the city for that stamp. should those prerequisites be tightened up a little bit?
I think it's tight today. In order to get an issued building permit, the plans have to be stamped by the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District and they evaluate the plan set and stamp them. I've been here quite a while. I think there have been 1 or 2 projects, smaller projects, that inadvertently didn't get a stamp. There was a mistake in that processing, but I think it's very minimal when that happens.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. This is Terry Latassa. So Fernanda, what was the city attorney's involvement in your presentation? Did you consult with them, or how did that all work out?
No, I read the law and I looked at a presentation that was given by the League of California Cities. A group of attorneys made that presentation, and I put together my presentation based on that one and the law.
Okay.
Our city attorney did not look at my presentation.
Are you planning on including the city attorney in this process at some point?
They have not been involved. No. The planning department is putting together the objective design standards, modifying our specific plans to make them objective. And that will have to go through planning commission approval, then city council, and city attorney will review the objective design standards and the specific plan amendments at the city council level.
I'll just add to that, at my level, I did have a conversation today with Ms. Davi, letting her know we were giving this initial presentation. The city council has actually also requested a presentation, or at least one council member. So I think we'll be going to them as well with SB 35 and SB 9. So Ms. Davi and her office will be involved.
Okay. And then another question, I imagine the appeal process just goes out the window in this kind of a streamlining thing. If there's it sounds like cities would be allowed to have, like, the ARC or the planning commission review projects, but it's really just going to be this sort of a checklist process, and there probably won't be any appeals.
That's right, because it wouldn't be a discretionary action, so there wouldn't be an appeal process.
Okay, so let's say this streamlining bit within, somebody brings in 100-unit project, so that means that there's a 60-day streamlining timeline on it. Then let's say an applicant brings in they submit it on January 1st, and it's really only half baked. They haven't included the submittal requirements. The drawings are they sort of rush them in. Does that, can they take advantage of that 60-day thing with that kind of an application?
The law says that they need to meet our objective design standards in order to qualify for SB 35 ministerial approval. So they do have to show that they meet those standards.
Okay, so
when they submit, they're going to have to submit a checklist that they filled out.
Okay.
To show us that they meet the standards.
Right. And this tribal consultation part, I mean, we have sort of designated areas in the city where we have archaeological resources. Would it be just those areas, or has that not been figured out?
It's not just those areas. So the Native American Heritage Commission has a list of tribes that are involved in our geographic area, and there's a list of about 11 or 12. So we would have to initiate consultation with all of them, and they are that's for the entire geographic area of Monterey.
That would be part of the checklist though, wouldn't it?
Okay, that's interesting.
The
Finally,
tribal consultation is required. So
interesting.
the project applicant submits the application, and then us city planners would engage with the tribes at that point.
The checklist, I guess we're on a tight schedule here now as a city to put together these checklists. How much, like, does it start on January 1st? What is our time?
So for now, already currently drafted what we think is about a 90% version of the downtown specific plan changes for SB 35. So our next step is we were talking about in January, early February, going to the Architectural Review Committee and getting their input, and then coming to the Planning Commission for recommendation to City Council. We could skip the ARC process, but I think we'd benefit from it. So if a project's submitted today for an SB 35 application, we won't have standards. So it'll be incumbent upon us, and I'd say the first quarter of 2022, to expeditiously work. It would be even better. What we did see some jurisdictions, Fernandez shared with me, one city for multifamily development adopted a maybe one or two page list of standards and called them interim objective design standards, so they could have something so somebody couldn't just submit. And because if we don't have anything, and right now our specific plans are all objectives, right? And it assumes an architectural review or planning commission review process, and we debate those projects. That's going to stop in the future. So for these qualified projects. So our goal is in January, February to bring those plans forward.
So when does SB 35 actually kick in?
It actually kicked in about over a year ago.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
So it was in the last batch of legislation. SB 9 goes into effect January 1st.
Kim, is there, what maybe you know, as I understand, there are challenges submitted against SB 35. Do you have any information on that?
I just saw the city of Berkeley, I believe, lost a lawsuit. They denied a project that was SB 35 and they lost it. So there's just the starting of stuff being filed. Either way, it's a relatively new law. I heard our adjoining city just received their first application. Monterey is a little bit different than Pacific Grove or Seaside in that we don't have water, where Pacific Grove, you can purchase water. And so I don't know how that's going to play out in Pacific Grove, and Seaside does have some water, not a lot, but Monterey, I mean, our books are really like zero. We're not, you have to be within the credits on site.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my next question is, if there's no appeal process in any way, shape, or form to SB 35, how does that get around due process?
File writ in Superior Court.
So that's my question is that it would have to go to basically a lawsuit, and that would possibly involve the city.
Probably a writ of administrative mandate.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'll make one comment. Certainly makes our decision to expand housing opportunities on Lighthouse Avenue more important than we ever imagined, because those are buildings that already have water allocated, and at least is a boost up. Builders or developers decide to go that route.
But there aren't 2,000 of them.
No, they're not 2,000, but there's more than one. Anyway, thank you, Fernanda. Great presentation and a lot of learning done, I see. How about Grant? Let's do SB 9 now.
Absolutely. Good evening, commissioners. Jennifer, are you able to share the screen, or should I?
He's wearing his Christmas tie.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Senate Bill 9, the fourplex law. So we can skip to the next slide. Much of the background has already been discussed. The regional housing need allocation sets the number of units for housing growth the city receives. It's done on an 8-year cycle. We're nearing the end of our 2015-2023 housing element, and we're starting the process of writing the 2031 housing element. And as we've discussed, the legislative bodies in Sacramento have had a keen focus on housing in recent years. Just last year, over 30 pieces of housing legislation were passed. And tonight, we're just covering SB 9. Next slide. So a few things to know. This will be our overview of the presentation. 2 elements of SB 9. First is the urban lot splits. That allows you to subdivide a single family home into 2 different lots. The second element of it is that you can then build 2 projects, 2 homes on that subdivided lot. So it really takes a single family home and allows up to 4 units of housing to be built on it. And then there are some special provisions related to ADUs, short-term rentals, and CEQA. And I'll touch on those later on. So for urban lot splits, all cities, all local agencies must approve certain proposed lot splits. And this involves no discretion, no public hearings, same process Fernanda just outlined. And this begins January 1st of next year. And Senate Bill 9 allows a lot split per project on each of the 2 lots thereafter. So 4 dwelling units can take place on 1 current single family home lot. Excellent.
I have a question. This is Hudson. I have a question on that previous slide. So let's say that I have a lot that qualifies, but I don't have a project for it. Can I just go ahead and do the lot split, or without a project, without actually planning on building anything?
That's
and maybe I'm jumping the gun.
So it is an over-the-counter approval, and I'll go through the requirements for that. So,
Okay, I'm just curious as if I could just go my house, go and split my lot, and I have 2 lots, and at some point in time, if there's water, I can build 4 houses on it, right?
Yeah, let's touch on the
Okay.
requirements and see if that answers that question. So to qualify for the lot split, each new lot must be a minimum of 1,200 square feet, although the city could reduce that requirement. It could require even less square footage for a new lot. And the lots must be roughly equal, at most a 60-40 split between the current land area. And it can affect protected housing. So you can't subdivide affordable housing units, rent-controlled units, or units that was withdrawn from rent by the owner within the past 15 years, or that's been occupied by a tenant consistently in the last 3 years. Next slide. Has to be within a single family zone. Can't be a protected historic property. Must be urban or suburban, as categorized by the U.S. Census Bureau. Essentially all municipalities in the state of California, including Monterey, qualify therefore. Must be a first-time application, so you can't subdivide a lot with Senate Bill 9 and then come back a year or 2 later and subdivide it again. You only get 1 bite at the apple. No coordination with adjoining property splits, so you can't collude with your neighbor to systematically convert neighborhoods into fourplexes. It has to be done individually. So you're just considering your own property when you submit your application. It must be consistent with the Subdivision Map Act and otherwise meet the criteria of that act. So to your question, Commissioner, I think your answer probably lies in the Subdivision Map Act and what's required for a regular subdivision. The lot cannot be located on a site that is has an exception to it from the government code. So these are wetlands, wildlife protection habitats, high fire risk, danger zones, etc. And there's a list of them under that government code there. Next slide. So now we come to further restraints on the local agency. You may restrict Senate Bill 9 lot split approvals, but only within objective design standards, as Fernanda just discussed. So these are objective zoning standards, subdivision standards, design standards, etc. And we'll go over a few of them on the next couple of slides. For example, the new units must be, at least 800 square feet. That would be an objective numerical standard. You limited parking, one or no off-street parking spaces, potentially not if it's within half a mile of high-quality transit, major transit stops, or from a car share location, just as SB 35 was in Fernanda's presentation. And then limits on setbacks, potentially as low as a 4-foot setback between the units. Next slide. Uses must be for residential use only, so you can't subdivide a single family home and turn it into commercial uses. They have to remain residential. Other structures must be permitted adjacent to the new structures. And no requirement of dedication or offsite improvements. So no right-of-way dedications or construction of offsite improvements may be required by the city. You have to just consider the single-family home subdivision on its own and not the potential public work improvements adjacent to it. No correction of nonconformities for the existing property. There's a 3-year owner occupancy requirement, but it's only by affidavit. So a owner may sign the affidavit that they intend to occupy one of the properties for the next 3 years. And this is not applied to community land trusts or qualified nonprofits. There's also no other owner occupancy requirement that's allowed. So you're taking the owner on faith with their affidavit there. And the city must report to HCD, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, on how many lots split applications it receives annually. So that'll be added to our housing element annual report. Next slide. In general, this does not supersede the coastal zone, except that the local agency shall not be required to hold public hearings for coastal development permit applications for urban lot splits pursuant to this section. Next slide. And there are very limited grounds to deny this. So local agency may deny the lot split if the building official makes certain specific written findings based on a preponderance of evidence, basically related to health and safety of the physical environment, and that there is no feasible method to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid those adverse impacts. So only health and safety exceptions apply to deny a project. Now to the second part, the 2-unit projects. A city must ministerially approve a proposed 2-unit development on a current single-family lot within a residential zone. No discretion, no public hearing. This is very similar to the ADU law that required ministerial improvements of ADUs on single-family homes. And it applies to building 2 new units or adding a second one. And again, it is all ministerial, and it mirrors the lot split process that we just went over. Next slide. So just as in the previous section, it must be single-family zoning. Urban or suburban is defined by the census. Not protected, so not affordable housing, not a historic. And there's a limit on how much of the existing structure can be demolished. So no more than 25% of the existing structure's exterior walls, unless the local agency, the city, allows otherwise, or the site has not been occupied in the last 3 years. Again, only objective standards apply, such as the 800 square foot requirement for each unit. The parking requirements are the same as before for off-street parking when it's close to transit or a shared vehicle location. And side and rear setbacks are just as before too, can be as low as 4 feet. Next slide. Now, interestingly, this does only allow up to 4 units. So after you successfully subdivide your lot and you build your duplex on each, you are not entitled to then add an ADU. So this does supersede the state ADU law. So you have to choose, are you going to have a single family home with an ADU, or are you going to do an SB9 2-unit subdivision? And that includes junior ADUs as well. Next slide. Short-term rentals are expressly prohibited, so you can't subdivide your property with the goal of being a small hotelier. And CEQA does not apply because it is a ministerial process, just as in the SB 35 presentation. And there are other laws. As I mentioned, there are over 30 laws passed last year related to housing. This current year, I'm sorry, let's take it back next year. Senate Bill 8 would allow streamlined review for housing development projects. Senate Bill 10 further allows optional upzoning by cities. And the list really goes on and on. And with that, ready for questions or comments on the specific law. Again, a lot of the process mirrors Senate Bill 35, but the specifics are related to the splitting of your single family development and potentially having a duplex on each new lot.
Since there's a silence, Gwen, I'll ask a question. Is this going to create another checklist?
I imagine so. Yeah, there will be a checklist ministerially approved Senate Bill 9 subdivision or 2-unit proposal.
So Kim's comment about a schedule to create these kind of things is going to be required. Thank you.
So Grant, this is Terry Latassa. Just a few questions. So
Sure.
I'd like to run through a typical like R1 lot in Monterey, like a standard R1 lot. There are lots of different sizes, but it's 50-foot wide and 100-foot deep, right? So the first thing that comes to my mind, if an applicant wants to divide one of these 5,000 square foot lots in half, they could do that. But do they have to create like a what's called a flagpole access for access along the street? You know, let's say it's 50 feet wide. Does that mean part of that back lot, let's say, has, you know, a skinny part that comes to the street for access?
Yes, just like another subdivision, each unit has to have access to the public right of way, the street. So as the developer, you have to allow access to both lots.
Okay.
That would be an easement, correct?
Yes, some sort of shared driveway easement to the two properties.
Okay, and so let's say an applicant brought an application for a subdivision. They don't have to bring in any housing application at this point. It's strictly a lot split application, I think, right?
I believe so. I can verify that at a later date when we do our joint presentation.
But the way it works right now is if you do a lot split, then you go through the process. I guess the city has to ministerially approve it. Obviously, if the existing house is sitting right in the middle of the property line, that might be troublesome for the applicant because of this 25% demo rule. So I can see that's will help people just, you know, create crazy new lots going through the middle of.
And the split has to be even.
Yeah, roughly even. That's right. So, but if they are successfully able to go through this ministerial process, then they have 2 new lots.
Mm-hmm.
They get a new assessor's parcel number and the whole thing.
Correct.
And they could.
And no water.
Yeah, no water, but then they would have to they have to have a 3-year owner occupied. So if, let's say somebody planned on selling the second lot, they could do this and then wait 3 years and then sell the other parcel.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I see a hand raised.
I have a question. How does the city's tree removal ordinance interact with this? In other words, if you had to remove a tree or just a number of trees in order to subdivide the parcel and put in the housing units, how does the city's tree removal ordinance interact with this?
So I may jump in here just because of the tree question. We're actually currently struggling with the same issue with ADUs. We know that ADUs have to be ministerially allowed, but if you're going to be removing trees, can you still require the tree removal permit? We currently do for ADUs, although I think it's something we're looking at. And I think it's only come up on like one application. So it's a relatively new question. And we'll have the same question for this as well, is if other permits are triggered, like they're going to remove a majestic pine or oak, can we prohibit that if it's going to prohibit the ability to build that second unit? And all I can say I imagine that answer, but I'm not positive, will be something like, if it prohibits the development of the second unit, you can't put it anywhere else, that you might have to allow that tree removal. So you can't effectively prohibit it, but we are going to ask that question as we go forward. And it's really helpful for you to ask these questions as well, because in your position, you come across these questions as well. And I think like the ADU ordinance, we had a lot of questions at both the staff and planning commission level about how this is applied. So I think we still, the answer about tree removals is still pending, although I have a guess on how it might be answered.
Thank you.
I think it's so interesting is that if you have an R1 lot, you have one house on it, and you want to build an ADU, you can split the water meter between the ADU and the main house, but you aren't creating a new meter. You split the lot, now you have a vacant lot, and you're right back to ground zero in getting permission to build a house or a house with an ADU because there's no new meters.
You would have to transfer a water credit, wouldn't you, from your house that you have?
Well, because of our water restrictions today, yes, you're going to have enough credits within your existing house or to be able to give it to the new.
Satisfy 2 lots.
And then the question was, well, it's probably zero properties in the city where you can actually build an additional 3 units with the credits from one single family house. You can maybe get enough to do an ADU, maybe enough to do another separate unit, but it's really hard to come up with 3.
Sure.
I will add a question on this topic of the Senate bill has come up in relation to an existing single family that is supplied with water by a well, and we have still attempted to explore that, but have not gotten too far.
Well, that brings up a very interesting subject. I touched on it earlier because when you have access, it's typically a deeded access easement. What if you have utilities that they have to be redone if your new lot goes over them?
Or easements, I would imagine. Probably most likely easements will have to be granted.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. And a lot of properties that portion that's not occupied typically has utilities going through them.
Yeah.
Under or over. So that's creating a whole new checklist requirement.
Well, unless there are more questions, thank you, Grant.
Well, I guess I do have one more.
Okay, Carrie has a question.
So I sent Kim that article from the San Francisco Chronicle from November 27th or 28th. And it talked about Los Altos Hills, and they're suing the state. And they're trying to put together ordinances in a big rush before the end of the year. Do I have that right? Or it seemed like it was just tilting at windmills to me, but
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing with a lot of these housing laws, that if they're passed by the legislature, we're probably not going to have very many grounds to challenge them on. So I think people's options are to work with their state legislators to have the laws changed. The other thing I read is some communities are trying to declare very quickly whole historic districts. And so nothing's eligible. I don't know. It's hard to imagine how this is going to play out in our city. I think we're in a really different position than most cities in California because of the cease and desist order. So I think we're going to see this implemented at a much slower rate. Probably, I mean, even if we got a water supply tomorrow, the last time I spoke to the water district, there's 3 years of testing of the water supply and before they would fully lift the CDO once you have an operational system. Of course, this December, I believe, is the last, the state is expected to further restrict the amount of water that Cal-Am can take from the river. We're going to be probably in a drought scenario. Does that mean we're going to be in rationing? How much pressure is there going to be to get water? I think this next year to 2 years will be a critical time frame for our water supply question to be addressed. And it just suffered a major setback with the LAFCO board. I believe it was the latent powers issue. Anyways, they denied the application from the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. So the public acquisition of the Cal-Am system was given a major setback about, was it a week and a half ago? So DSAL's hit a major stumbling block with the Coastal Commission. The public water now is going to have to address the LAFCO situation.
Yeah, but Tim, I think the LAFCO issue, just to interrupt, has nothing to do with water source. That's just the public water takeover of the current
versus the Salinas
system.
Valley.
That has nothing to do with the amount of water that would be available. So I want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, that's true, because there's an EIR that's by the Monterey One Water for using more water from the Salinas Valley for recycled water and putting it back into the ground. So what I'm just saying is, or trying to express, there's a lot of balls in the air right now, and how that's resolved in the next year to 2 years so we can actually have additional water for construction, I think is going to be a major question. But you're right, those are distinct issues.
Well, and then puts the city of Monterey in the position of sitting and watching while other cities that have plentiful water try to use these new laws to develop new housing and see how that works out. Wow.
Grant, you mentioned SB 10. How is that going to play in this?
SB 10 was the ability for cities to further upzone areas of their city. So if the city wanted to allow higher density zoning in certain areas, we have even more latitude to do that. And Kim, you can elaborate on the downtown area that was increased for up to 100 units within the area, the Pearl Street district. Right?
Yeah, we've already done this quite a bit with our last specific plan rounds. So you remember we've allowed more density in certain areas. So we've already done that. I don't know as we go further with this, whether the city will decide, probably with its housing element update, or there's areas we're going to upzone even further. I don't know. Those are going to be serious policy questions that you'll debate.
Okay, and
Right in saying that the SB 35 situation is a bit punitive because we didn't meet our housing goals.
Correct. It's intended to be, if you haven't met your housing goals, the state is saying that basically you're going to have to approve housing developments under certain situations. If you remember, they're even talking, or at least were a couple of years ago, about it becoming more punitive in the future. If you don't meet your RENA numbers, like, will you be eligible for state grants? Will you be eligible for state transportation funding? There were discussions about whether or not, if you're not building housing, then maybe you don't, maybe you're not entitled to those funds.
And there'll be some roving band of bureaucrats roving the state looking for violators.
Well, so yeah, actually the
Yeah.
state of California attorney issued a public release statement that they've created a task force of attorneys through the Housing Accountability Act to be a task force to review all these decisions by local governments to see if they're in violations of these acts. So in fact, there was a press release on this exact issue from the state attorney's office that they will be creating this task force. So it is becoming, well, we have to comply with state law anyways, but the enforcement of that state law will be interesting as we, cities get challenged in the next
Men in Black coming
years.
to our city.
But Kim, instead of being passive on this, would it be in the city's interest to actually get some kind of a declaration that we're in a housing crisis because of the water, instead of trying to argue every time with different boards? If we could have some kind of a declaration that you could just slap down and said, fix that, and we'll be glad to work with you.
To be determined. How's that?
And also to be continued. These are two great topics for our planning office updates when we have our future meetings. Anyway, thank you, Grant, for a great presentation. Just so much information. It's hard to digest it all and try to imagine the future consequences. Let's move on to our consent agenda. And is there any member of the public who would like to discuss the consent agenda? Jennifer, you want to give the lead in on how they can do that?
Yes, I will. Let me just pull up my documentation. Members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you live with no lag time. This meeting is also streamed live on youtube.com/City of Monterey with a 10-second delay and Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. If you would like to provide public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone, making sure to join in time to accommodate delays. To join the meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. Since the meeting has already begun, you will find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864 toll free. Once again, 833-568-8864 is the number to call to join by telephone. You will need to enter a webinar ID, which is 161-990-8039. I repeat, the webinar ID for this meeting is 161-990-8039. If prompted for a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions for using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. Please turn off the computer or TV speakers or go to another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised, and there is a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting.
Thank you. You see anybody on the consent agenda?
I see.
Yeah, well, one correction to
Well,
the
let's-
minutes of October
Comments.
2026.
Hang on a second. Did anybody call in?
There are a few attendees in the meeting, and none of them have their hands raised.
Okay.
And just to confirm, this is for the approval of minutes on the consent agenda. And
So let's take the 2 items one at a
So
time.
we just need to make sure if anyone in the public would like to pull those items or have public comment as well.
would you like to provide a public comment?
Okay. Okay. All right, let's take them one at a time. Are there any commissioner comments on the minutes for October the 26th, 2021?
Stephen Milich, I have a comment.
Okay,
There should be an asterisk by my name as I attended electronically also.
all right. Any other comments on October 26th? All right, let's move to November the 9th. Any comments on that set of minutes? Okay.
This is Hunton. I move to approve the minutes for October 26, 2021 as amended by Steve Milich and the November 9th, 2021 minutes as presented.
Second,
All right, there's been a motion to approve as amended for October 26th and as presented for November the 9th. Second by Commissioner Dawson. Any comments on the motion? All right, let's take a roll call for the vote.
Yes, Chair Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield. Commissioner Brassfield is muted.
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson,
yes.
Commissioner Fletcher is absent, and Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
Commissioner Milich,
Yes,
and Commissioner Reed. Well, you were already there. Sorry. Sorry, you've already voted. These minutes are both approved. The October 26, 2021 minutes were approved as amended, and the November 9th, 2021 minutes were approved as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, sorry for continuing. Now would be a good time also to open it for public comments for items not on the agenda. So if we can do that, just a quick refresher to join the meeting, the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone. Use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864 toll free. The webinar ID for this meeting is 161-990-8039. To provide public comment once you are in Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, or to provide public comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. And I see no hands raised on Zoom. Would you like to make a comment?
Okay.
Thank you. Safe to move on. Thank you.
All right, our first public appearance item is number 5. Consider 301 Casa Verde Way, a variance application VA 20-0257 to allow installation of fencing along the front and side property lines and fencing for a trash enclosure that exceed the 4-foot height limit for this reverse corner lot. The applicant is Steve Mickle with Mickle Construction, Inc. Property owner is Thomas Coutinho. Residential medium density, multifamily dwelling, R3 zoning district, medium density, residential general plan designation, etc. Let's begin with staff presentation.
Hi, my name is Christy Sabdo, Associate Planner with the City of Monterey. I'll be presenting 301 Casa Verde Way. So as a result of an anonymous complaint, the city's code compliance coordinator, a case was opened regarding the non-conforming height of existing fencing and trash enclosure fencing at 301 Casa Verde Way. The applicant, Steve Mickle with Steve Mickle Construction, is requesting approval of a fence height variance to allow fencing along the front and side property lines exceeding the 4-foot maximum height limit at 301 Casa Verde Way. Staff is recommending denial of the variance to allow installation of fencing along the front and side property lines and fencing for a trash enclosure that exceeds the 4-foot height limit. The site is zoned R3 and is developed with apartment buildings in the Villa del Monte neighborhood. The lot is located at the corner of Casa Verde Way and Encina Avenue. approximately 150 feet from the Highway 1 off-ramp. The lot is a rectangular shaped lot, approximately 8,600 square feet in size. Apartment building sits on a flat lot with little to no elevation change. The applicant has installed fencing along the corner streets of Casa Verde Way and Encina Avenue, where the maximum height of the main fence varies from 5 feet 10 inches to 6 feet 1 inch. The trash enclosure fencing is approximately 7 feet 10 inches. The property is defined as a reverse corner lot. Oh, sorry, I had a couple pictures too. So this is showing the fencing along Encina Avenue and along Casa Verde Way. And then this is just showing the neighborhood along Casa Verde Way and Encina Avenue. You can see the fencing of the subject property. The property is defined as a reverse corner lot. Reverse corner lots in the R3 district require a 4-foot fence height along the front and side property lines. The property sits at the corner of Encina Avenue and Casa Verde Way. A maximum fence height of 4 feet is required along both Encina and Casa Verde Way. So the code for R3, there's fence standards in the R3 district that state the maximum height of a fence or wall shall be 6 feet, except in required front or side yards adjoining a street of a reverse corner lot, where the maximum height shall be 4 feet. And also for corner lots, they shall be reviewed by a traffic committee where there shall be no visual obstruction at the intersection caused by fences or walls, which could constitute a traffic hazard. Okay. And the application was forwarded to the traffic staff to review this. I'll go over that a little bit more. Let's see. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so in 2014, building permit 140518 was issued for multifamily units on this lot. The approved plan notes that the 6-foot fence along Encina Avenue was to be removed. The existing trash enclosure was permitted to be located on the property line with 4-foot high gates facing the internal driveway. Here are some pictures along Casa Verde Way showing the fencing on either side of the driveway. The maximum fence of the height along Casa Verde Way, the existing fence it varies between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet 1 inch. Here's the fencing along Encina Avenue, where at the back you can see the trash enclosure fencing. Fencing along Encina Avenue varies from 5 feet 10 inches to 6 feet 1 inch. The trash enclosure has been installed at a height of 7 feet 10 inches. The trash enclosure door swings out to the sidewalk, which could pose a safety hazard. Let's see, you can see the trash enclosure fencing here. It's a little higher than the rest of the fencing. And I'm going to go over the findings. So there are general variance findings, and then there are fence findings that need to be made. So general variance finding 1 is that because of special circumstances or conditions applicable to the subject property, including topography, strict application of the requirements of this ordinance deprives such property of privileges enjoyed by other property in the vicinity and under an identical zoning classification. The subject property is the subject multifamily unit property sits at the corner of Encina and Casa Verde Way. The property is located 150 feet from the Highway 1 off-ramp and along the path of travel between Del Monte Avenue and North Fremont Street. More immediately along Casa Verde Way, there are 3 commercial properties. Due to the location of the property, which is located on a corner lot, there is likely a higher level of traffic than other residential streets in the neighborhood. Staff visited the site and witnessed the high volume of vehicles passing through Encina Avenue and Casa Verde Way intersection. The property, which contains multifamily units, does not enjoy the same privileges of privacy as other residential zone lots in the neighborhood. The lights from vehicles turning at the intersection shine light on the apartment complex at night, disrupting the residents. The existing non-compliant fence would allow the tenants of the property to enjoy the privileges of privacy and be able to avoid the intrusion of lights into the residents' apartments that the other properties in the same zoning classifications enjoy. Furthermore, the property has experienced theft on their property and non-residents, such as homeless camping out on their property. The property owner is trying to create a safe environment for families to live. The second general variance finding is that granting the application will not be detrimental or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity of the development site or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. Granting the fence height variance would not be detrimental or injurious to the property or improvements in the vicinity of the development site or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. Public Works has reviewed the existing proposed fence heights and has determined that the fence would not create a traffic safety hazard. General variance finding 3, that granting the application would be consistent with the purposes of this ordinance and will not constitute a grant of special privilege, inconsistent with limitations on other properties in the vicinity and in the same zoning district. So granting the fence height variance is not consistent with the purposes of the Monterey's zoning ordinance and would constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with limitations on other properties in the vicinity of the same zoning district. While certain special circumstances due to the location apply to the property, the variance findings cannot be met for number 3. While life and safety are concerns of the property owner for this multifamily property, there are alternative means of mitigating these concerns. For example, with vertical landscaping such as tall shrubs and trees, and placing a gate at the front of the property. Let's see,
Christy, I have a question. In regards to that last general variance finding and response, number 3, if you could put it back on number 3. So what is the purpose of having a 4-foot fence on the front and around the corner? Wouldn't that be a safety purpose? And therefore, I mean, because on the corner, so you could see around it and wouldn't be dangerous for cars and things like that. They would be able to see around the corner. But if that's not an issue, because there's the previous finding found that, or one of the previous findings found that it was not dangerous because it didn't impede, and later on it shows that there doesn't impede the view, then seems like that wouldn't be inconsistent, unless you're saying 4 feet is 4 feet and 4 feet is the standard no matter what, and it's because it's 4 feet, rather than actually having a purpose for 4 feet at the front.
So while it may meet other findings, it's not meeting this finding 3 in terms of it will not constitute a grant of special privilege.
But aren't there other houses around? Even in your staff report, you mentioned other, and I didn't look at them, but there are other units with the same issue with higher fences. So it seems like that would not be, that would be consistent unless the city is planning on going after all of them, or making sure all of them that you've identified, because I think they're identified in the staff room. I have the staff report open and I looked at it, but you identified other locations where there are issues. So, I mean, I think if we're not going to do that, I just have a concern that we're picking one out and not picking others out.
Right. I did explain that there are other non-compliant properties, but I guess I'm saying here that these non-compliant properties shouldn't be cause for the subject property to also be non-compliant. But that's a discussion the Planning Commission can have and decide. So should I move forward and then we can discuss it?
Yes.
Okay. So there are fence variance findings that also need to be made. So one of the following determinations listed here, A, B, and C, need to be made. And C is the one that that can be met. So C is the fence does not appear as a visual barrier and does not impede the sight line for vehicles. The fence does not appear as a visual barrier. The existing and proposed fence was confirmed by Public Works to not impede the sight line for vehicles. So it meets this one. There's also another fence variance finding that needs to be made, and it needs to meet one of the following, and it meets the one on the bottom, the location of existing structures. Let's see, there's a physical hardship with one of the following, the location of existing structures on site. So the multifamily units on the subject property are within the line of sight for vehicles entering and leaving the intersection. Fence height higher than 4 feet would allow the tenant's privacy and security, and at night would keep the light and glare from the vehicles from directly impacting the residents.
Can you go back to the previous page, please?
Yeah. So to be clear, on the fence variance, the applicant only has to meet one and does.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so on the property variance, he only doesn't meet number 3.
Yes.
And so that is what this hinges on,
Yes.
that this variance request constitutes a special privilege. Then all the rest of it is just information.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. Trying to see where I am. Okay. So staff has requested conditions of approval if this is to be denied, that the existing fence along Encina Avenue and Casa Verde Way shall be reduced to a 4-foot maximum height required for fencing on reverse corner lots. The fencing shall be reduced to the 4-foot maximum height required along Encina Avenue. And staff is recommending denial of the variance because that general finding 3 cannot be met as staff sees it.
Well, okay. Questions for Christy? Christy, you've taken on a kind of a contentious one here.
Yeah.
Okay.
The applicant also has a presentation. So
Yeah,
Let's
thanks,
start with
Christy.
questions for Christy, and then we'll move on
Okay.
to applicant
Okay.
presentation.
Thanks, Christy. I just have a few questions.
uh-huh.
Just, some of it is just sort of bookkeeping stuff, but on the first page of the resolution, on the 4th whereas, there's just a typo where it says it's decisions by the planning commission are appealable to the planning commission. I think that's supposed to read city council.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Seen that before.
And then, so I guess you only have to meet one of the findings for the fence thing, and they
Right.
got that, but when I was out on the site, I'm looking at page 4 on the bottom, the first fence finding about the property adjoins or is across from a commercially zoned property. When you're standing on the corner, you're looking right at a commercial property. Maybe it's a definition of what
Yeah,
across
it's
means,
diagonal. It's not like adjacent to. So
but it's across. It's one of those definitional kind of things.
yeah, and it only needed to meet one of those, and it did. So
Right, but I mean, if it had 2 of them, it would make,
sure,
it would-
sure,
be a different shade.
right.
And I guess my main question is about the hardship issue. Or I guess it's really where does the safety issue of homeless people, jumping over the fence come into play? That they, I mean, I guess on this lot, they could just walk onto the driveways, but I guess where does the safety come into play as far as people intruding onto the property? Is that, which of these findings
I mean,
would that apply?
oops, sorry. I don't see one that necessarily applies to that, but it is a concern of the property owner and the people living there and some of the neighbors as well who have issues with homeless on their property.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I can fit
Well, I
that
guess
into any of these, but
in my experience of getting variances in the past, I've been before many bodies, that it's the general finding number one, the special circumstance, is that, the classic one is that there's a cliff on the property or something like that. That is a special circumstance that makes this variance necessary. So I guess this would you say that this general variance finding number one is basically the arguments of the applicant that because of privacy and safety, that is a special circumstance. Isn't that kind of
Sure.
their argument?
I would say so under location
Okay.
and maybe surroundings.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, then. Other questions for Christie before we go to the applicant? All right, let's go to the applicant's presentation.
The applicant unmuted or
What is
could you raise your hand,
what's the
Steve?
applicant's name for this?
Steve?
Oh, Steve. Steve, I believe you can unmute yourself now, and I will add a 3-minute timer to the screen.
He's the applicant. Doesn't he get more than 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Yes, we can give him more than 3 if the chair
Sure.
says so. And it looks like he is unmuted.
Hello,
Hi,
Go
Steve.
right ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Steve Mickle. I'm the applicant. Mr. Catino called me in after he got, I guess, red tagged on this fence. I did not build this fence. Tom Catino is a longtime client of mine. And I have a property up the street, a 4-unit complex up near Casa Verde and Montecito. I get the same problems, the same issues. So I totally understood where Tom Catino was coming from, why he built this fence this high. Can you go to the next slide? And this is why Tom's seeking the variance. Tenant safety and security. There's many fences in the neighborhood. I'm going to show pictures that are over 4 feet, just like one of the commissioners brought up. And there is no traffic safety at the 4-way stop. And I've got some video that shows that, which might be a moot point because Public Works is even stating there's no traffic visibility issues with traffic at the stop signs. The top lattice is somewhat open so law enforcement can see in. And definitely the traffic and engine noise is a big issue with tenants, as it is in my complex up the street. Next slide. This is a letter from one of Mr. Catino's tenants that I actually met this man. And he lost a really nice bike before this fence was built. And also homeless that he encountered at the trash enclosure. That's one reason that Mr. Catino built the fence, the height he did, returning into the building with a private area for the tenants. Next slide. These are just some of the fences in the neighborhood. This one up at 350 Casa Verde is almost across the street from my complex. That ivy hedge is about 10 feet tall. Next. Here's just some more on Casa Verde. The one on the right, 424 Casa Verde is about 5'6". 418 Casa Verde is about 5 feet. And the one on this one on 424 Casa Verde is solid, where Mr. Catino's is up 4 feet with solid fence and then semi-open lattice on top. Next. 322 Casa Verde up the street from Mr. Catino. That's a 6-foot fence. 87 Montecito is about 5 feet. Next. These two on Helvick are both about 6 feet tall. Next. Just some more. Another one on Montecito, 5 feet tall. And then the one on the left, neighbor Encina. Christy talked about that in her staff report. That's 6 feet tall on Casa Verde. And then another neighbor fence to the right, over 4 feet tall. Next. This is the intersection of Casa Verde and Encina. Neighbor A, the same fence. It's mostly 6 feet tall on Casa Verde. And I did a remodel addition for that lady a few years ago. And again, it's all about privacy for homeowners and tenants. The one on the right, neighbor B, is 4 feet and, you know, wide open, not much privacy on a busy street intersection. Next. Just some other samples of fences over 4 feet in the front yard. Next. Just some summaries of engineering departments okayed the fence due to there's no traffic visibility concern at the intersection. Cars approaching the 4-way stop, they can see each other. I've got some video that demonstrates that. Also, next, please. Can you play the video, Christy?
Sure. Okay, hold on.
So this just kind of shows the traffic is constant all day long at this intersection and up the street where my complex is. And this is just kind of midday. It's even worse at morning rush hour traffic, evening rush hour traffic, and about lunchtime. I also get plenty of complaints from my tenants about the traffic noise. There's a couple of videos here that show how clear it is at the stop sign, that there's no traffic hazard. There's one view there. If you were at the stop sign, there's clear visibility. Here's a city of employee. Almost came to a complete stop.
Thank you. Is there more, Mr. Mickle?
Yeah, you can skip the next video because it's kind of some of the same. Can you go to the next? I want to go to my Casa Verde. This is about just, the big thing is the traffic and the noise, and then also the homeless. Next, please. So this is my property up the street at 359 Casa Verde. You can see on the right, I had to build a tacky little wire fence around a shrub. We had a homeless person that decided to take up residency there. And after complaints from 2 tenants, I had to do something. The shrubs there, I put in for a previous tenant just to kind of calm the traffic noise and give some privacy. Next slide. This is looking down the driveway. The picture on the right, there's a trash enclosure at the end of the driveway. And we've had, on several occasions, homeless people camping back there. I even found one two males back there one morning. They had pitched a tent there and they quietly left after I asked them to. So I've had my share of homeless problems up at this property also, and some thefts. Even had a break-in at the laundry room one time where they were trying to get all the quarters. Next, please. This is a letter from one of my tenants that she's pretty proactive at watching the place. This letter talks about the person that was camping behind the hedge, and also homeless people that she's found on the property in her carport, and also behind the trash enclosure, and also human waste. So I can fully empathize with Tom Catino on this because I have the same issues up on my property. I had a tenant also ask me about a roundabout at the intersection of Casa Verde and Montecito. I did talk to Rich Deal, who was the traffic engineer at the time, and that intersection is too small for that. Now, my tenant's point was to try and get traffic noise reduced, and it can get really bad at rush hours, especially when you get a truck or a loud motorcycle or something stops at a stop sign and then takes off, and it gets pretty annoying. In staff's analysis on page 7 and 8, there's 2 paragraphs that talk about what we're asking for in this variance is, and she's referring to the high traffic volume for the tenants to enjoy privacy, intrusion of lights, theft on the property, camping out on the property. The property owners trying to create an environment for a safe environment for families to live in. And then she's also got a statement in here, granting the variance would not be detrimental or injurious to the property or improvements in the vicinity of the development or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. Public Works has reviewed the existing proposed fence and has determined that the fence would not create a traffic hazard. So there's a lot of pluses to this fence for the property owner and the tenant. The tenants, this seems to be just a technicality that staff's recommended a denial. We meet some of the criteria and definitions for a variance, and some we don't.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Mickle on behalf of the commissioners?
I'd just like to say this fence makes common sense.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Mr. Catino might be here.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a question. So I understand your presentation, and what about the trash enclosure though? I don't understand why that needs to be so high. It's like.
That's a question for Mr. Catino.
Okay.
Before we get to that, can I ask a question of staff? Madam Chair?
Yes.
Christie, what height would a hedge be allowed? Would a 6-foot hedge be allowed when the 6-foot fence is not?
We don't have restrictions, right? On hedges.
I beg pardon?
We don't have restrictions on hedges or landscaping heights.
Unless it blocks traffic video.
Well, because if a 6-foot hedge is allowed, if it doesn't block traffic, isn't a hedge acting as a fence?
So we've gone around and around on this over the years. Basically, our fence regulations are, wood or cement or a wall or something like that. And basically, the citywide requirement is 4 feet in the front yard setback and 6 feet behind that, with the exception of these reverse corner lots where it's 4 feet along the side and the front. And so that's been our long-term standard. And we have not defined vegetation as fences ever.
Kim, would a hedge taller than 4 feet be allowed there?
Yes, we do not have requirements on the height of trees or vegetation in the city of Monterey.
So he could replace the 6-foot fence with a 6-foot hedge and be in compliance.
Right.
Correct. Or he could have a 4-foot fence with a 6-foot or taller hedge behind it or in front of it and be in compliance.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Mickle mentioned that Mr. Coutinho wants to talk. Do you have somebody on the line, Jennifer?
Yes, and it does appear that T. Coutinho has a hand raised. You should be able to mute yourself and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear, excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening. And just to, on the reason why the fence for the trash enclosure is so tall is because when you open, it's a dumpster. So when you open the dumpster, you need room to open the top of it because it goes straight up, on its hinge on one side. So we have to go up enough so the tenant can get their trash inside. So that is the reason why we have it closed. The other problem is I have it gated like that is because so many problems with homeless as they go into my trash, throw everything out, what they don't want to deal with, and just leave it there. So, I'm on the verge of just putting that padlock on there and give a key to all my tenants and let them have a key to it because the homeless they don't care, and I'm more like safety for my tenants is mostly important there. The noise is definitely a major problem in the safety for my tenants as well. Like I said, that Casa Verde I've lived here all my life, just so you know. I was born in Monterey Hospital, so I lived here. It's not 1970 where, you could not have a fence and not worry about it. Today, you need to have a fence. We have homeless people. We had a smaller fence there before. I had a family there. People were worried about their children playing out in front. A lot of people walking by, a lot of problems. They decided to move away. Took quite a while to re-rent it because it's a very busy street. I worked on that fence. I was there. And I tell you, there's a lot of trucks. There's Highway 1 off-ramp and Highway 1 on-ramp. You're going main artery from Fremont to Del Monte. You have the sandwich by Right Market there. They make great sandwiches there, but it's a busy street. I know other people have a commercial area where, we have a semi-commercial area and they have tall fences throughout Monterey. A lot of people have fence. I mean, I think one person off the other street, he has like a 9-foot fence. I mean, I wouldn't put something like that there. I think what I have is reasonable. And just like Mr. Mickle said, he had people camping out. I had people camping out behind my fence by the 1-bedroom apartments. And I mean, they had a campfire and everything going on there, and I'd had to put that because it's easy to jump a 42-inch fence. They don't, and I put that fence there for the safety and security. One thing she has a little daughter and, they play out in the back and there's no problem. Very private. Vandalism with my tenants, lost his bike. Another one of my tenants, they took it out of their garage. I just, I don't know if you have any questions for me, but I like to leave this fence there because, like it says, it's a safety hazard. It's helping the tenants there and they feel comfortable and safe there. I've backed out of both parking areas with my truck and there's no problem,
Well, let's see if anybody does have a question for you, Mr. Coutinho. Anybody on the commission? All right then. Well, thank you very much. Is there anybody else, Jennifer, who's lined up?
I see no hands raised.
Well, let's open it up to public comment and thank the two applicants for making their presentation. If there's any member of the public who wants to make a statement, this is the time. I think we've already given you the instructions.
Yes, but just in case somebody's tuned in later, I'll just remind quickly that the information to join our Zoom meeting from a computer or phone is provided on this meeting's agenda, posted to isearchmonterey.org. The phone number to join is 833-568-8864, toll free. The webinar ID is 161-990-8039. There is a raise your hand function in Zoom. Please use that if you would like to present a comment. There's also an option to raise your hand by phone. You can dial *9 to raise your hand by phone or *6 to unmute when called upon. And there are still no hands raised. I
All right.
believe the only attendees here are our applicants.
Okay. All right. With no hands raised, let's close public comment and open commission comments. Want to start, Mike?
No, sir. Nope.
Okay. Terry?
Sure. So I appreciate staff's report, but I don't agree with it. I do think that this applicant can make these three general findings. The first general findings that there's special circumstance, I think, is that it's on a corner with this privacy and headlights and homeless sort of impacts on the property. That is a special circumstance on this property. The second finding is that it's not detrimental to the neighborhood. I believe that's the case. And the third finding is that it doesn't constitute a special privilege. And I think I drove around that neighborhood today. There are a whole bunch of properties with 6-foot fences. So I don't see how you could consider this a special privilege. And then the special fence findings, I think, have been established that one of those has been met. So that's my opinion. I'm in favor of this application.
Okay. Let's go to the Zoomers. Steve Milich.
Yeah, I think that likely the findings cannot be made. I think it does constitute a special privilege. To rely upon illegal fencing, justifying further illegal fencing doesn't seem to me to be a legitimate argument, especially in light of the fact that the applicant can install either behind or in place of the fence that's there, shrubbery, hedges, whatever, at the desired height, and still be in compliance with the law. So I do not think that the appeal should be granted. I think it should be denied. Thank you.
So this is Hanson. So I will say that on David Avenue several years ago, before any of you were on City of Monterey Planning Commission, we approved a fence variance for a fence that was higher than the 4 feet that was allowed. It was not on the steep part of David Avenue, but it was just after that where it kind of flattens out a bit. And basically for many of the same reasons, we found that there was no special privilege. Special circumstances were that David Avenue is a busy street, children living in the house, dangerous situation, and it was approved. We Planning Commission approved that variance. So based upon that in fact there is precedence for higher fences and variances for higher fences, I would say that it does not constitute a privilege to them, that in fact it it's going along with what the planning commission has already done in its past.
Okay. And Mike Brassfield. Unmute yourself, Mike.
Thank you. So I thought I was already done that. I have been to places where, because of security, people lived in within 12-foot walls with broken glass bottle and concrete at the top. When I look at I think the intent of this ordinance in the city, it's that we don't want these enclosures. And I think personally that a 4-foot, 48-inch fence is fine for a front yard, not necessarily a backyard. And this particular house, as I heard the presentation, they were advised in 2014 what the height requirements were, and they did not choose in that period until now to ask for a variance. I discourage people from waiting until you're in the hot water to climb out. On the other side, I do agree that this particular property is not as dangerous as some others might be even within that same neighborhood. But we don't have enforcement of these issues, and if it's only based on complaint, then we have another problem, because it's unequal representation. I don't know, but I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Okay. And do you have something, Mike Dawson? Okay. All right. I've been back and forth trying to make up my mind. The fence, of course, is the best fence on the street. The rest of the fences around in the neighborhood are just as crummy as they can be. And some of them are 4 feet and some of them are 6 feet. And none of them are 7 feet. And the builder of the fence had the foresight to split it into a 4-foot section and a 2-foot section, so that if the 2-foot section had to be removed, the fence could stay. I think the points being made about substituting the remaining 2 feet by building a hedge protects city from getting further applications for further variances for this same neighborhood. And I'm inclined to support the denial. So is there a motion? Okay.
I move to deny the appeal.
All right. Put
Variance.
I think the motion should be to,
Deny the variance application.
Yeah.
BA 200257
yeah,
to allow installation of fencing along the front and side property lines and fencing for a trash enclosure that exceeds the 4-foot height limitation for this reverse corner lot.
is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there a discussion of the motion?
I just wanted to say that it seems inconsistent for the planning commission to approve one 6-foot fence on David Avenue and to deny another one on Casa Verde.
Good point.
Comment. I used to live in Palo Alto in a reverse corner lot, and I put up a 4-foot fence, and I put some what are those big thorn plants? Pyracantha. I put up pyracantha outside the fence, and man nor beast couldn't get through that thing. It got to be really something. So I think there's an easy solution here.
I would think that what happened at David Avenue is not before us. And certainly the facts would have been different from the facts that we have on this one. We consider each one on its own merits.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Stephen, but I'm just saying that it's when one has already been granted, there already is precedent, and there already is, it's not granting a special privilege because there already have been special privileges granted. So
That's twisted. No.
no, that's
I
true.
disagree.
It's true.
All right. With those comments, I think we may be ready for a vote. Jennifer, you want to take the roll?
Mhm. Yes, thank you for your patience as I finish typing. Once again, this motion is to deny the variance application, and we have the roll call vote with Chair Freeman
Yes to deny.
and Vice Chair Reed
No.
and Commissioner Brassfield.
I've been thinking about it, but I'm going to say yes.
And Commissioner Dawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher is absent. And Commissioner Latassa
No.
and Commissioner Milich.
Yes.
All right, thank you all for voting. It looks like this application for variance is denied. And I do believe we need to certify findings for that.
The findings were part of the decision. So this decision is appealable to the city council within 10 days on forms available either in the planning office or online.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Complicated, very complicated. Thank you, Christy, for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Our next item, we have 3 items to go, and I think we can wrap this up in one seating. Our next item is to consider 55 Camino Aguajito, a use permit UP 210178 to convert a hotel restaurant to a manager's unit, lobby expansion, laundry room, exercise room. The applicant is Don Desai. Some initials there, BAF zoning district, commercial general plan designation. Begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Chris Schmidt. I'm an senior associate planner at the City of Monterey, and I've been working with the applicant on this project. The staff recommendation is to approve the use permit. So here we see the subject property. It's located on Camino Aguajito, across the street from El Estero Lake, at the corner of First and Camino Aguajito. So yes, the project's description is a change of use from an existing restaurant.
Chris, I don't see it on my Zoom anywhere. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So I will
Now I can see it.
go back to show that graphic of the location. I think that's probably the important one so far. Yeah, so again, the project description is a change of use from a restaurant to a manager's unit, laundry, exercise room, and a general lobby expansion. In 2020, the restaurant shut down due to COVID, and the property owner has decided that it's no longer a viable use at the site, and they'd like to convert the space into these uses. So here's an image courtesy of Google of the Bay Cafe in its existing form. And you can see the Monterey Bay Lodge entrance there as well. Here's the existing site plan, floor plan. It shows that existing hotel or hotel restaurant with the bar at the center, this seating kind of surrounding that bar, and to the left, kitchen at the rear, service area at the rear, and two restrooms at the top left there. So as I mentioned, the space would be converted to the residence, which would be a 3-bed, 3-bath innkeeper's residence. An exercise room for guests, a lobby expansion, which would include a vending machine, The bathrooms would be converted to a unisex restroom and a laundry room with 4 washer dryers. So the planning commission must make 3 findings for approval. The first is that the proposed use is in accord with objectives of this chapter and purposes of the zone. Accessory uses can be permitted by use permit in the VAF zone. These are the types of accessory uses that are listed in the VAF zoning district. The next is that the proposed use and proposed conditions under which it would be operated or maintained will be consistent with the general plan, will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of persons residing or working in or adjacent to the neighborhood of such use, and will not be detrimental to properties or improvements in the vicinity or to the general welfare of the city. So staff has made this finding. The conversion of these uses supports the continued commercial use of the hotel. The hotel use would continue as the primary use. Staff has required conditions, a condition rather, on the following slide I'll discuss, that would protect the residents, businesses, property, and improvements in the vicinity. And the last finding is that the proposed use will comply with any specific condition required. And that condition is that this manager's unit is to only be used by employees, not by guests, cannot be rented out for any reason, only used by the hotel staff.
But do we get credit for one more housing unit?
I don't know. I don't know if we count it, but
Hey, come
anyway,
on.
I would count it. But that concludes my presentation. Again, the staff recommendation is to approve. The applicant is here. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Questions?
Does this have to go to ARC?
The exterior changes would require an AR permit. I don't think that they have to go to ARC. I think that they're administrative. Okay.
Any questions for Chris here? I'm hearing silence. Applicant like to make a presentation. Well, here, your chance.
Since I'm here, I would say something.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the first class treatment.
Oh,
Thank you, Chris.
thank you for your time. It's a very simple application. I am the manager. I personally probably would be residing there. And the COVID, when the restaurant shut down, the owner didn't get any government grants, which is the RRF, because the restaurant was part of the hotel. It wasn't like a freestanding restaurant. So it made it very challenging to continue pumping money into it. And it's a beautiful space. And we would create one apartment, which would be adding a housing in city of Monterey, as well as some guest amenities, expanding the lobby and guest use laundry. So that's all. Thank you for your time.
Just a comment. I'm really sorry to see that restaurant go. It's a crime that it got shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it served well for hotel guests. It was very difficult to make it work for dinner hours. Before my time, there used to be like car dealerships across the street, automotive use space where there were a lot of employees, and there was a great dinner business. But for the last 15 years or so, dinner is really difficult.
Yeah.
And it depends on, hotel guests utilizing it for breakfast. And with COVID all over the place, the breakfasts are being eliminated for concerns.
Well, I think you've come up with a creative solution for viability in the future.
Yeah.
Really.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah. Thank you. And shall we open it up to public comment?
One more time to, actually, I think we'll have to do this twice. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID, which is 161-990-8039. Once you are in Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. Or if you're joining by phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. And I see no hands raised. And we have no audience.
All right. Then let's return to the commission for commissioner comments. Anybody on the Zoom link want to make a comment about this? Mike Brassfield.
First of all, I would like to commend the owner to opening up some employee housing that we don't have enough in this city. And whereas I'm sorry to see this restaurant not used as much as it was in the past, hopefully it will continue to prosper. And I'm supportive of the process.
Hanson?
I would be happy to move to approve use permit application UP 21017 to convert a hotel restaurant to a manager's unit, lobby expansion, laundry room, and exercise room at 55 Camino Aguajito pursuant to the findings and conditions that are in the staff report and the draft resolution.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. That's 0178. There's an 8 at the end of there. Any discussion of the motion? All right, hearing none, let's call for the roll vote.
Thank you. And just to confirm, that was Chair Brassfield or Commissioner Brassfield who seconded that, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And for the roll call vote, we have Chair Freeman.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Reed.
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher is still absent. Commissioner Milich.
Yes.
And, oh, sorry, I skipped Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
Thank you. This application was approved by a vote of 6. Thank you.
Unanimously. Congratulations. Your application has been approved. And I really hope we do get credit for one more.
Really?
Is that a 10-day appeal period?
Yes, and for the public record, there is a 10-day appeal period available, and forms are available in the planning office or online.
Super. Next item is consider 484 Washington Street, a use permit application UP 210171 for restaurant major use. The applicant is Ian Penniman. The owner is AG Dobby Properties, PCD zoning district, commercial general plan designation. Begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still Chris Schmidt, Senior Associate Planner with the city. I've been working with the applicant on this one as well. The staff recommendation is to also approve this use permit. Here we see the subject location. It's at 484 Washington Street along Washington near, I think that's Pearl, although maybe don't quote me. Anyway, it contains the Melville Tavern. And again, the project description is a change of use from restaurant minor to restaurant major. And I'll also add that the primary difference between a restaurant minor and major is minor typically just serves beer and wine, whereas a restaurant major also would serve cocktails or spirits in addition. So this applicant is also in the process of applying for a Type 47 ABC license. That's ABC Alcohol Beverage Control. Again, it allows them to serve spirits, and they have an hours of operation from 9 a.m. to midnight daily. And here's a street view of the restaurant. And a site plan. So they have, it's a really nice interior. They have a bar. I think I wrote into the staff report I may have counted 13 seats, somewhere in that range at the bar itself, and a number of seats within the dining room. I think that I mentioned they typically have a staff anywhere from 4 to 10 people. And again, they serve brunch, lunch, and dinner daily. Actually, I take it back. Brunch is typically on the weekend, but I think they do have a breakfast item. Again, these are the same findings for approval for a use permit that the proposed use is in accord with the objectives of this chapter and purposes of the zone. This zone is the downtown PCD for the downtown specific plan. Restaurant major uses require a use permit in the specific plan. Well, I think you understand this condition, basically that the project is consistent with the general plan and that it won't be a detriment to public health, safety, or welfare, or people living or working in the neighborhood, or improvements nearby, or infrastructure as well. So this use permit would support the commercial use. The existing business operations would continue as they have normally done so. I did speak in depth with one of the higher executive police staff who had said that they had not had any experiences with problems at the site ever before. We did include conditions of approval that would further protect residents, businesses, property and improvements. And that those conditions are the requirement for ABC, alcohol beverage control lead training, which is the licensee education for, it's written in the conditions, that they would stick to their hours of operation from 9 a.m. till midnight. Any change to their hours, past midnight would require an amendment to the use permit. That there would be a 12-month review of the use permit, reviewed by the Planning Commission, and that they would provide a more detailed security plan to staff and for review by planning staff and the police department. They did mention in their project description that they do have cameras. We want to see where those are, how their staff is going to be checking IDs. Anytime there's liquor being served at these businesses, there's a potential for problems. And I did talk to the applicant. He's more than willing to do these things. It sounds like really for this business, it's an opportunity for them to serve cocktails with dinner. I'm sure they will have customers past dinner when dinner closes at 10, but I think that the applicant seems to have the background to know how to deal with those types of customers. So if there are questions for him, I believe he's still on the call. But yeah. Anyway, that concludes my presentation. Again, the staff recommendation is to approve. I'm available for questions, and I think the applicant is as well.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Okay. Hearing none. Any questions for the owner, Ian Penniman, if he's still on the call? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions.
Crickets.
Crickets, yeah, I'm hearing crickets. So let's open for public comment. Jennifer, you want to read that out?
Definitely. And just for the record, I do see that Melville Tavern is an attendee in the meeting. If the applicant would like to speak, this is your chance to raise your hand using the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, if you are a member of the public and you would like to join, please do so using the link or phone numbers provided on the agenda posted to isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, toll free, then enter the webinar ID 161-990-8039. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. To provide public comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. And while I was presenting my speech, the applicant raised their hand, so I will let them speak. Right now, you should have permission to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I got my unmute. If you can hear me now, I'm here.
We can, thank you.
All right, good. there's no video here because I had a dog in my face. You guys okay? So, hey, thank you all for being there, and honestly, just the support that I've had in the community. We've been there for just gosh, 2.5 years. I think I stepped in there and because it was August of 2019. Melville Tavern has been, what I've wanted to do for a long time. I've been in restaurants for almost 40 years, and part of that has been slinging drinks for 30 years, and I finally get to be able to be in my little spot, and I love serving food. I love taking care of people, and this is just such a cool opportunity to be a new part of what downtown is, and what I wanted to, what I see can be more. There in East Village, we're in right there at Griffin Park. It's a good little spot already. It's quiet. And hopefully, I just want to see it be where this little restaurant in the corner, away from, downtown, if it could ever be crazy in downtown Monterey, which I don't see it being. It's more of it's a tavern. We're not a nightclub, and I would never be something like that. I've already been there, done that. And it's nice serving the food, and then what the extension is to be able to give the opportunity to have the license to expand the restaurant, to not only give us an opportunity to do better as a business, but also give just a little more piece of downtown, and honestly, it's try to pick up and be a little more of a downtown culture, and it already is. Melville Tavern has really taken off the way that I've hoped, and it just extends and makes it a better spot downtown. I don't see anything of there being a problem with going from beer and wine to pushing it to where it'd be having a cocktail before dinner, and maybe an after dinner drink, and in the details where we do say that we're done by midnight. I don't feel like anything really needs to happen after midnight, other than wrap it up and go home. If you're, as far as being a downtown and being part of the city, I certainly don't want to be. I want to be part of a positive than think of anything would be running over what we have there already and asking for any kind of trouble. And that would be my most would be asking for any kind of trouble. I think that Chris had mentioned about security cameras and such like that, where we do have 24-hour surveillance already. And then on premise, we always have a manager. And like I said, with the surveillance, there's always something going on there that we have security, both with alarm. I think that once we were to be able to move from the Type 41 license to the Type 47 license, that I do know that there would be more responsibility as far as public safety, overall, just responsibility, and what would per se come along with that kind of business. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen both sides. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Baja Cantina, but I poured margaritas out there for a lot of years, for 20, and I've seen the other side, but man, we created something beautiful out there. It's a quiet, cool little destination spot, and it's neat that given the opportunity right there in downtown Monterey, I have nothing more than but to be able to promote and create a cool little downtown spot, and we've made it this far, and COVID wasn't easy,
Thank you.
and we're still here.
Thank you, Mr. Penman, and thanks for your application. I think at this point we can close public comment. And commissioners, anybody have a comment to make before
Have we
we?
heard general comments from the public?
I did announce the comments earlier before the applicant raised their hand, and no other attendees that have raised their hand since I made that announcement.
Thank you for the clarification.
I'm sure.
If nobody has any comments, I would just move to approve use permit application UP 210171 for restaurant major use at 484 Washington Street pursuant to the findings in the report and pursuant to Chris's comments and in the draft resolution.
Right, subject to the conditions also that were stated.
Second,
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any comments on the motion per se?
I think this is easy.
I think so.
I think this is easy. I don't see any difficulties. There's no record of any difficulties.
A lot of work to serve spirits.
Yeah.
Sure. And also upgrading and enriching a successful business downtown. Really, congratulations to him. You want to call for the vote, Jennifer, please?
Yes. Chair Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher is absent, and Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
Commissioner Milich.
Yes.
Thank you. This application is approved by a vote of 6, and it is appealable to the planning office by forms found at the planning office or online at the monterey.org/planning within 10 days of this decision.
Excellent. All right, our last agenda item is, I just can't believe we're seeing this again. Consider, really, he hasn't given up. Consider 300 Cannery Row. This is a permit extension application 210204 for a mixed use to adaptively occupy a building at 300 Cannery Row. Maximum allowable building height of 45 feet, density in excess of 30 units per acre to provide 8 condominium units. Use permit 19-05 through approval of a tentative map, permit TM 190243, and to include a residential parking plan at 258 and 270 Foam Street. The applicant owner is the 300 LLC, Cannery Row, Commercial and Planned Community Lighthouse Zoning District General, Commercial General Plan Designation.
So I just have a couple brief comments. I can't believe it's been 2 years since
I
the city
know.
council approved this project. They actually on appeal upheld the planning commission's approval, and that was on December 17th of 2019. So our 2-year expiration date of their permits is basically December 17th of 2021, and they've requested a 2-year extension. And so the extension would be to December 17th of 2023. The reason for that extension is they have been diligently pursuing their additional permits. I think they're on their 3rd or 4th round of comments trying to address the California Coastal Commission issues. Most recently, I have some good news. The Army Corps, after about a year, issued a letter saying that no permit is required from the Army Corps. The National Marine Sanctuary just completed their review. They only took about 2 months, and they also said no permit is required. And so I think the last one they have in front of them is with the Department of Fish and Game. We anticipate a no permit requirement there as well, but the Coastal Commission is requiring all of those confirmations. before they will review the coastal development permit. So, and there's additional issues the Coastal Commission's looking at in addition to that. So they have diligently pursued that. I provided the dates in the staff report. Staff is recommending that the permit be extended to December 17th, 2023. And as I looked at my staff report today, I should have included that date in the now therefore clause, and I didn't. I just provided the findings of why. So my amendment to you is to actually include that date of December 17th, 2023. And that concludes my presentation.
2023. Thank you, Kim. I can't believe it either. And it's just waiting for development. Do we ask for public comments here? All right. First of all, any questions for Kim on the project? All right.
They're still planning on using that roundabout parking plan.
Yes, the parking is up on Foam Street because there's no on-site parking down on Cannery Row itself, sort of that oceanfront property there. So their parking lot would be up on Foam Street. And then if you remember, there's the walkway down to the site.
Yeah, that's good. Jennifer, why don't you ask for public comment now?
Yes, and this should be the last time. To join the meeting via phone or computer, please use the information found on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864 toll free, then enter the webinar ID 161-990-8039. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. And to provide public comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. And I see no hands raised.
All right, thank you. Let's close public comment and return to the commission for commissioner comments, if any.
I'm in favor of having the extension because they obviously have been working for years on this project, and it would be a shame to shut it down at this point.
Absolutely. I think 10 years was what Mr. Davis said when he originally came, at least when I was here 2 years ago. I think he'd already been working on it for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of patience.
He deserves a Nobel Prize
Yeah,
for
I
patience.
know. I know.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the extension to December 17th, 2023.
I'll second that.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any comment on the motion? All right, call for the vote.
Wait, did we get public comment? I guess there
Yeah.
was.
We did. There
were no
wasn't
hands
any.
up.
Yeah,
We did announce public comment. There was just nobody who
Okay,
raised
sorry.
their hands.
nobody there.
And for the roll call vote, we have Chair Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher is absent, and Commissioner Latassa
Yes.
and Commissioner Milich.
Yes.
Thank you. This application for permit extension is approved by a vote of 6, and it is also appealable to the planning office within the next 10 days.
Thank you, Kim, for keeping up on it.
They're lining their ducks up in a row. They only have one left to go, right, before the Coastal Commission. This is great. Absolutely great. Any updates?
Just one brief update. The city council did approve your amendments to the lighthouse and downtown specific plans for first floor residential, and they were really excited about it. It was interesting to hear their deliberation. We probably had about 12 plus members of the public speak in favor, so even more than we really had at the planning commission level.
Wow.
And I think they really saw it as a success, and they congratulated and thanked the commission. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then nothing else from a technical standpoint, but I want to wish you all a happy holidays and enjoy your break. the appeal for 2101 North Fremont. We're finishing up the staff, well, actually finished the staff report. It is on next Tuesday, the 21st. And we did receive a fairly long additional study today that, so we need to digest that a little bit.
Oh, boy.
So if you're interested in that appeal, the 21st will be at least the first hearing of the appeal.
Okay, I'll be there.
And our next meeting is the 11th.
January.
I need to look.
You can go on vacation.
Again?
And that's what it says on the tentative agenda for January 11th, at least
That-
in the agenda packet. So.
Yeah, that is accurate. Thank you. That seems so far away right now.
And I think we're done. Happy holidays.
I have Commissioner housing subject to receiving water within 3 years is something that could be argued that we should do. The state would require us to do, even though we can't furnish water. Now, an argument against that is after 3 years, that building it without would be an eyesore. But then the state could say, but a good reason for it to go for 3 years is that it will encourage you to ensure water hookups within that 3-year period, or not have, or you'd have an eyesore. Now, Commissioner Brassfield made a very good comment about we should get some declaration that we're not violating any state law by not providing water we don't have. And it came to me by what we should do, either the city attorney or the council, or if they don't have standing, we should get one of our either assembly person or state senator to request an opinion from the state attorney general's office that we are in compliance or we are exempt from complying with that law so long as we don't have the available water. Now, an attorney general's opinion is not law, but it's the closest thing to it, and the courts give it great deference. And I think in order to protect ourselves, protect the city, we should get that, or at least attempt to get that kind of decree or opinion from the Attorney General.
Good
Thank
idea.
you and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
That is a great idea. Now,